friendos, it's Adamoshi as Naji the skunk, and in today's video I'm going to be making a fursuit tail for Karrot 2.0. So let's just get right to it then.
Okay, so here I am drawing out the shape of the tail on some paper. I just tweak it as I like, and then I will cut it out. Alright, so here I have some 2-inch foam that I'm gluing some pieces of 1-inch foam so I can get a little bit more thickness for the tail. And then I will trace my pattern on top of this foam. Alright, so here I am tracing the tail paper pattern onto the foam, and I'm going to cut that out with my electric knife. It really makes it really quick to cut this out. So here I'm cutting out little half circles for the part that sits against my back to help transition the tail from my back to it tapering to the end. I glue that down, and then I kind of use my electric knife to taper down the edges and round off the hard edges along the tail. I'm not super good with using the electric knife, but it helps to get, generally started with carving. So here is the most time-consuming part of this whole entire project, is since I'm not super great, precise with the electric knife, I am just snipping away forever and ever, and occasionally picking up the electric knife, but basically using the scissors to snip away to make it nice and smooth. This is so freaking messy. It took forever to clean up from this. I definitely need to get better with using my electric knife so I don't have to sit here and basically kill my hand trying to snip away, because I ended up having a nasty blister on my finger from the friction of the scissors just snipping over and over. It's not good. Plus, taking breaks is really good so you don't get all get hand cramps. So here I kind of skip to where it's mostly finished. It's looking good. It's all nice and smoothed out. Just still trying to make it nice and even and symmetrical from side to side. Shaking off the little loose pieces. But as you can see, dear Lord, it is a freaking nightmare mess. Alright, so here I'm taking some EVA foam, cutting it out so I can have a little base part at the end there, and that way it'll have something more rigid sitting against my back. So I glue that on. Make sure it's very well glued, and some little pieces, like the foam wasn't perfectly glued together, so I glued that back. And here I'm cutting the belt loop hold. The belt is going to go through the foam, and that way it'll be more secure and snug against my body when I'm wearing the tail. Making sure this EVA foam is nice and secure, going around the edges and making sure it's completely dry. Now I'm testing the belt to make sure it goes through. I'm taking some elastic strips here and I'm going to glue them down. They're supposed to help retain the bounciness of the tail for a little bit longer over the lifespan of this tail. Should help it be nice and bouncy, because this is supposed to be a super motion tail. And I put it on both sides. And yeah, I've used some cut resistant gloves to help me hold it down so it won't burn my hand, and I felt the heat from the hot glue even through these gloves. So definitely it's a good idea to have something like that to protect your hands from the hot glue. Here I'm tracing out little ridges that I'm going to cut out of the foam, and it will allow the tail to have more swing when you swing the tail back and forth. It will allow it to have more motion back and forth, so it'll give it super motion. Honestly, I think I took out a little too much from the ridges, but it's fine. Okay, so here I am making the little tube that will line the belt loop hole, so it'll look nice and pretty on the inside, so you're not just seeing foam. And I'm just test fitting it here and testing the belt, see if it will go through with it. And now I am duct taping my tail to get the fur pattern. I like using masking tape over like regular duct tape because it's easier to cut through, and plus you can draw on it easier, and it doesn't seem to be nearly as sticky when trying to remove it from the foam. But also at the same time, the downfall is it can tear easily. Alright, so here I am tracing out where I want to cut and where the orange fur meets the blue tip. So yeah, he's going to have an orange tail with a blue tip, and I'm just writing information down that will help me, remember what side goes to what. And I'm cut that out very slowly and carefully. So I transfer it onto some paper, and I drew a dart to help it lay flat, because you need to have the pattern to lay flat and to just sew up the darts later. And I write on the back the information that's on the front, the fur direction, and what side of the tail that pattern is on. I use a heart and a diamond for the left and right side. And I also labeled the color of the fur that it goes to, especially if it's a more intricate fursuit. With this one was really easy, so it's easy to remember, but if you've got a lot of markings, it's just easier to write down what color that is and what part of the body it's on. So I traced the main part of the tail. I'm going to do the same for the other side. Trace the pattern on the paper and cut it out and write the information on the back. Alright, so here's my blue fur for the tip of the tail. trace the patterns upside down so the fur will be on the correct side. And now I'm tracing the orange part of the fur. Alright, so I'm going to brush out my fur, and I'm kind of darkening, using a different color because it's going to be hard for me to notice this line when I'm trying to sew up the pieces. So I'm using a different color that's a little more contrast to the blue. And so I'm going to cut those out. I also added the seam allowance minus the darts. The darts I do not add seam allowance. And then I cut the pieces out, cut out the darts, brush them, make them nice and clean, and then I do the same with my orange fur. Just adding my seam allowance. And I cut those babies out. And I brush them out to make the fur look nice and pretty, and to brush out any loose fibers. Alright, so now we are going to sew these pieces together in the darts. I'm going to start with sewing the blue tip, one side of the blue to one side of the orange, if that makes sense. So sew that on. And then I'm going to brush out the seam, cut off any excess from the seam allowance. And now I'm going to work on sewing up the pinning and sewing the dart so that the end of the tail will have a little bit of a curve to it. And I'm going to do the same with the top of the tail because it does have a little bit of a curve. Pin and sew the dart. And then I will brush out these seams. And then I do the same on the other side of the tail. I sew that up. Brush it out. Looking good. And now I am going to pin these two pieces together so that I can sew all of them up except the end where I can stick the foam into the tube. Just making sure that the fur is nice and tucked inside and it won't be sewn into the seam. It will a little bit, but you can help prevent having so much of it sewn into the seam by just making sure it's nice and tucked as you go along and pin. I use these clips. I think I got them on Amazon, but they're very useful. And then I'm going to start sewing all the way around. The sewing machine makes this so much faster. This would have taken an astronomical amount of time to do by hand. Alright, here I am turning it inside out. So it's just a tube. An orange and blue tube, and I'm brushing out all of these seams. And now I'm going to take it and start trying to roll this up onto the foam, and this is such a struggle. Like, I fought with this forever and ever, but you want it to fit nice and snug on there. There's no need to super glue or hot glue this down because it's very snug. But yeah, it's definitely a struggle to get this to go all the way down, to get the foam to go all the way down the tube. Alright, so here I'm cutting a little slit in the fur where the belt loop lining will go through. Oh, this is my kitty, Gigi. She's named after the black cat from Kiki's Delivery Service. She is such a sweetheart. She loves people. She is so affectionate. She's a snuggly girl. Very sweet girl. Okay, so back to fursuit making. So here I am cutting out a little piece of foam. So this is going to be the end cap on that will rest against my back. That's going to cover the EVA foam, and I just wanted a little bit more cushion, so I'm going to add some foam and glue that little piece of minky material to this, so it has a nice little cover to it. Glue it down. Gave it a little bit of a seam allowance so I can, hand sew it onto the tail. Okay, so here I'm pinning it on and to help to keep it in place, and I'm just going to use some upholstery thread and a curved needle and just make my way all the way around using a ladder stitch to sew all the way around to attach it. It's going to take a while, but it looks really nice. I tie off the knot, and then I brush out the fur a little bit to make it look a little nicer, prettier, and then I just give the whole tail a good, nice brush. Brush, brush, brush. So now I'm sticking the belt through, and now I'm going to sew the ends of the belt loop lining to the orange fur. This is really difficult, or at least it was for me. It doesn't look super great, but it's better than having the foam just exposed. And there's my other kitty. That is Skittles. Yes, named after the candy. I guess I was hungry when I, named him. But yeah, he's not as snuggly, but he likes to be around people. He's still affectionate, just likes to be around people, but not be bothered all the time. He just wants to be in your presence, but doesn't want to be touched all the time. But he's a very sweet boy. Alright, so I'm brushing out the edge, and there you have it. There is a finished fursuit tail, a super motion tail. And yeah, you can pull it around to the side because it's made of foam. It's just a solid piece of foam, and it goes right back and it swings. But yeah, there you go.
Alright, there you have it. There's Karrot's new fursuit tail, a super motion tail. It was the first time I made one, so I hope you learned a lot just like I did. So, hope you have a wonderful day. Bye-bye. See you later, alligator.